Greetings, one and all. Somebody asked if I'd reviewed radio mics, and the answer is yes and no, or no and yes. The reason being is that the business end of a radio mic is this, and many of the mics I've got are capable of being used as radio mics. Either you buy the head, they're specifically designed to fit onto various radio mic bodies, or you can use an adapter. As far as I can see, the only ones that can't be used are condenser mics that don't have a specific radio mic head, and I don't think you can use a condenser mic with the adapter because it would need to supply phantom power, which it possibly could, but would drain the battery in no time at all. So I don't think you can use them with an adapter, and if they haven't got a specific head, then you can't use those. But this SM58 does have a head for radio mic, I believe. I've seen them. Or you could use an adapter. Same with the Biodynamic M88, Neumann, Earthworks, and many people have specific heads, which you should look at later. I've used radio mics extensively. I was in the big band, and companies that we worked for had various venues around the country, and they had good systems, and they had radio mics because it was a kind of a cabaret thing, and you'd be out on the floor and moving around a lot, and they just had them anyway. So really, I'm going to look at a few things, but the radio mic, or the wireless bit of it, is, if you like, separate from the business end, from the head, and it effectively, I say simply, but effectively simply replaces the cable. If you like, that's the thing about them. You don't have this cable, so with the cabaret things, you get all tangled up in your feet and you just can't do certain things. So that's the idea of the radio mic, to give you that freedom. They're not any better per se, because they're expensive and so on. You might think, wow. In fact, they're likely a little bit worse, but you might not notice, even the latest ones, which are better than the old analog ones. So I thought I'd have a look at a few things here. So, as I've said, well, my experience then with the big band, what did I notice? They had Sennheisers. It seemed fine. I mean, it was quite a big space, quite a big PA, high quality PA. But, you just turn up, you just plug it in, you just use it. I wouldn't say I had any complaints. Didn't really notice. It was good enough, let's put it that way, for sure, good enough. The only thing I did notice was that often would be sitting there, two, three singers, and we'd be sitting there, and sometimes the battery would start flashing, so we'd get the sound person's eye, and they'd come over and swap the batteries. What they had was a bank of chargers on the wall, and obviously business is a business. You want to keep recharging them, but rechargeable batteries start to wear out after a while. I guess they thought it would get through the set, so it'd all be freshly charged and put in, but obviously some of the batteries were starting to not hold their charge. So battery stuff, you've got to be on top of it. You've got to be on top of it, really. That's the only thing I'd say. Moving on then, let's have a look at a few things. What have we got? Oh, actually, the person also asked me, I think they were concerned about quality. So things like Earthworks mics, which are high definition with a massive bandwidth. Can they handle that, is what he's asking. I've done a little bit of research, so I can maybe give you some idea about that. One place you can look up between analog and digital wireless I found was very good site, is Shure, and it's the Whiteboard series. I found a video there which I watched, and that was very interesting. That was comparing analog and digital wireless, Shure Whiteboard series. From my research, it seems that high-quality analog is likely to be better than low-quality digital, and vice versa. Makes sense, maybe. So buy the best you can afford. It says analog 60 Hz to 16 kHz, so fairly restricted, and a dynamic range of 50 dB. But it says we'd like 100. Oh yeah, so they use a compander. So the dynamic range is squashed going in, or by the transmitter, and then it's transmitted, and then it's expanded again. So a bit of processing there. But vinyl records have been doing that for forever, so don't know. Digital, it says the capsule output is digitized, so as soon as it gets from here into the transmitter, it's digitized. And it says frequency and dynamic range, no worries, once it's digitized, so they say. They said there is some stepping frequency and dynamic range and phase. So my understanding of that is then that it might be, like with digital, stepped rather than rather finer gradations of analog. I guess it depends how fine that stepping is. It's like people said CDs didn't sound so good because of stepping, if you will. It seems to me then, from doing this bit of research, that good quality digital wireless is the way to go if you're going to go wireless. What about cable versus digital wireless? So we're going to stick with digital wireless now. Some people say there might be a delay. Now on voice, on drums, guitar, rhythm things, if there's any kind of latency, yes. But even then, if there's a little bit, you can get used to it. With voice, which is not so percussive, would you notice? You could understand that you've got your capsule straight into the cable, straight into the desk. No delay, apart from whatever mechanical, physical, might be some, I'd imagine, but, negligible. Obviously, wireless, into the wireless conversion, must take time. Then transmitted, I don't know how quick that is, probably as quick as a cable, I've got no idea, wireless. Then the other end, most of them conversion again. Has to be converted at some stage. Some say they don't convert and go into a desk that does it. But anyway, it's done. It's going to have to be converted before it gets to a speaker, otherwise you won't be able to hear it. So you've got two bits of, so maybe is there some latency, is there some delay? Does it mess with things like Earthworks, this high definition, very fast impulse rate, or impulse, does it mess with that? Would you be able to hear? Would the speakers mess with it more? Because they've got to be up to scratch. Who knows? As I say, satisfactory for me when I used the Sennheiser ones on the gig. Though it wasn't an art gig really, it was a performance functional type gig. I mentioned the Bane of Batteries. Limited selection of capsules. So yes, has your favourite mic got the capsule? Many of them have. The Biodynamic M88, as far as I know, doesn't. So you might not be able to use your favourite mic unless you use the adapter, which probably isn't as good as full pro systems. Wired mics are easy and reliable. Pretty much, though you can have, I've had some dirty pins and dirty sockets and cables can go. Mine don't. I don't get them dirty. I may clean them every few years, don't really see the need, but I might. And I look after my cables and wire them myself, but good quality cables are pretty tough if you look after them, so I'd say very reliable with a wired mic. Wireless, I suppose there's more things could go wrong. You could have signal problems and stuff getting in the way. I don't know. They seem pretty good these days. There's a video on YouTube. I think it's titled Wireless versus Wired Sennheiser E945 microphone. What's the difference? And I think it's hosted by Thomann, digital versus analog. There's some singing at 0857, where he switches between the mics. You can have a listen. A few specs. The Sennheiser EM9049 goes from 20 to 20,000 hertz. So that covers Earthworks SR40V, which is the biggest, widest bandwidth frequency mic I have, which I think is 30 to 40. So it doesn't cover above 20, but I can't hear, I'm sure. Anyway, people do say you can perceive, but I think something, if I'm not wrong, with Earthworks, that 40 kilohertz is a result of its speed. So it's got a light diaphragm in order to get that stopping and starting and every little increment as accurate as possible. And a result of that is that it can register resolve up to 40k. I don't think that was an aim necessarily. I think that was a consequence, if you will. But for us and the average PA, 20 to 20,000 has been the gold standard for hearing for decades. CDs are everything. That's what we've been after. Speakers, can it do 20 to 20k? So that does 20 to 20k plus or minus 0.5 dB, which sounds pretty good to me. There's a couple of prices here. A Sennheiser XSWD is £279. Oh, that's an adapter. So that's the adapter, 279. Oh, because you've got to have that's the adapter transmitter, and you've got to have a receiver. So yeah, it's 279, I believe, for the one that plugs in. Then I could run my M88s, my biodynamic ribbon mics, no condenser mics. Don't think I've found one adapter that will run a condenser. So about 5 hours of battery life, rechargeable. So that's an option. Get an adapter. Really depends on whether you need the freedom. That's what it boils down to. If you don't need the freedom, I'd say don't bother with all the batteries and expense. Why? Just use a good cable and there you go. Spend it, get a really nice one, £30. Look after it. Last you a lifetime. So for me, I'm often playing an instrument. I'm not wondering about the place anymore. If I was on the boat, I used radio mics as well. We had this long boat, so yes, I've had quite an experience with them. That had some issues. It was a bit tricky because it was a long boat, not a long boat, but a boat that was long, and band was up the front bit here, with speaker arrays all the way along the boat, and then the boat narrowed. If you're looking from above, here's the band. That's the area we're mostly performing to. Then the boat narrowed here where it had the bar, and then you walked through into the back area of the boat and would perform there, monitoring yourself through the arrays of small speakers that they had. And yes, we had a lot of issues there with cutting out. Now, not surprisingly, because it was quite a long way away. It's a boat. It's got, I don't know if that makes any difference. It's got electronic stuff going on. And then there was no line of sight because of this narrow bit, and you'd wander around, and often it would drop out. There are probably ways around that with other transmitters if they'd got it sorted. Who knows? But that's the only time that was a bit of a pain. So, yeah, if you don't need all that, if you don't need to be wandering around and doing that, just get a cable, I'd say. Okay. Now let's get down to it as best we can in terms of quality. What have I got here? Gary Parks on Pro Sound Web. I'll quote that in a minute. So the questions were high definition. Now, the WL40V, which is Earthworks condenser head, SR40V head, is, yes, 30 to 40 kilohertz, and the impulse response very fast. What do they say? Pro Sound Web says, by presenting the best possible signal to the wireless link, the only coloration introduced is as a result of audio anomalies within the wireless system itself. What we're saying, looking at the Earthworks head, they've done their work. So the Earthworks head was altered from the handheld version. I think the maximum dB was reduced, or no, the level that it put out was reduced because the electronics probably couldn't handle it. It's a very pokey mic. The electronics probably couldn't handle that much output, so it was reduced. I don't know if anything else was done, but they haven't just stuck it on a wire. They've looked at it, obviously. It's Earthworks. So basically, Earthworks have done their part, and he's saying that it'll be a result of audio anomalies within the wireless system itself. He goes on to say, and when coupled with the highest quality, most uncoloured wireless systems, the signal that reaches the mixer retains the transparent sonic character of the wired version, as borne out by listening tests. And that's the WL40V. That's what he says. So he's saying that he can't hear any difference with good kit, with Earthworks head and whatever system he used. I think it was a Shure ULXD. Yes, that was used for the tests. So that's what he says. And there you go. I would be interested to do my own listening test, but I'm sure, I'm not doubting it at all, but just because we all hear different things, might be interesting. But there we go. Not much more to say on that, really. Do you need it? If you don't, then don't. If you kind of need it, maybe figure out a way of using the cables. Just save yourself some money and some battery issues and just possible reliability issues. But if you really need it, and I can see some people do, then you've got no option anyway. So it seems to be get the best quality in that you can, and then with whatever budget you've got, try to get the best quality, I would say, digital wireless system, because cable simply won't do if you've got to be running around. Anyway, hope that might be of use to some of you, and I'll see you next time.